What if the biggest royal mystery was never hidden inside palace walls at all, but hidden in plain sight through silence, missing answers, and a grandfather who says he still does not know the face of his own granddaughter? Because that is the controversy now exploding across royal watcher circles. Not a rumor whispered in dark corners, not a passing headline, a question that has survived year after year without being fully answered. And at the center of it stands Thomas Markle, a man growing older, growing weaker, but seemingly becoming more determined than ever to ask the one question that refuses to disappear.
It's absolutely unbelievable that any member of the royal family could have set about creating what is an international scandal where people have the means, as a result of her and her husband's conduct, to question whether they have perpetrated the scam of the century.
When people hear Thomas Markle speak today, they are not hearing a celebrity chasing attention. They are hearing a grandfather describing a reality that many find almost impossible to understand. Think about it. A little girl has reached another birthday milestone. Years have passed. Family history has continued moving forward. Yet the man who should know her laugh, her voice, her personality, her habits, claims he remains completely shut out. No visits, no conversations, no family moments, nothing. And the more he speaks about it, the more uncomfortable the situation begins to look. That discomfort has only intensified because Thomas Markle is no longer speaking merely about family estrangement. His recent comments have focused attention on something larger, something that supporters believe raises serious questions. Why has every request for the simplest family connection been met with what appears to be total silence? Why has the distance remained so absolute for so many years? And perhaps most importantly, why do questions seem to multiply every time new images emerge? For years, observers have watched this story unfold piece by piece, each photograph, each statement, each appearance, each absence. Separately, none of it seems dramatic enough to shake the foundations of the story. But together they create a picture that many followers find increasingly difficult to ignore. There is a reason Thomas Markle's comments continue attracting attention. He occupies a position no commentator can claim. He is not an outsider studying the family from afar. Well, he is part of the family itself. He is the children's grandfather. That alone gives his words a different emotional weight, because when he asks questions, people naturally wonder why those questions still exist after all this time.
Based on one that wants to be out of the public light, doesn't want his children involved, and that's why we see them get the back of their heads, and one that's desperate to utilize that.
And utilize the children.
The basic facts alone sound extraordinary. Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor has now reached another birthday. Her name honors two of the most iconic women connected to royal history. Yet her maternal grandfather says he remains no closer to knowing her than he was years ago. Imagine that reality for a moment. Imagine watching a child grow entirely through carefully selected public images while having no direct relationship whatsoever. That is the reality Thomas Markle says he has been living. Supporters point out that he is not asking for extraordinary privileges. He is not demanding public appearances. He is not demanding media access. He is asking for something that most families would consider normal: a photograph shared privately, a phone conversation, a chance to know the grandchildren connected to him by blood. Instead, according to his public statements, every path seems closed. And this is where the story begins to shift from sadness into mystery. Because when ordinary family contact disappears completely, people start asking why. The questions became even louder as discussions surrounding photographs of Lilibet continued growing online. Royal watchers began comparing images across different periods. They debated appearances, they debated details, they debated whether certain photographs answered questions or created new ones. Every new image seemed to generate another round of analysis. Thomas Markle has openly acknowledged that he finds himself studying the same photographs everyone else studies because they are essentially all he has. Think about how strange that sounds. A grandfather examining public images to understand a grandchild he cannot see in person. That reality alone has become one of the most emotionally powerful aspects of this entire saga. The silence surrounding the situation has also become part of the controversy itself. Every Every unanswered question creates another question. Every refusal to engage creates additional speculation. Every gap invites people to fill it with their own conclusions. And those conclusions have only intensified as more voices entered the discussion. Some observers point to the extraordinary secrecy that has surrounded major family milestones. Others point to contradictions they believe deserve clarification. Others simply focus on the emotional reality of a grandfather who continues asking for access while receiving none. What makes this situation so explosive is that none of these concerns have disappeared with time. Usually, controversies fade. Questions lose momentum. Public attention moves elsewhere. This one did not. Instead, it kept growing. It kept attracting new voices. And it kept returning to the same uncomfortable point. Why does a grandfather remain completely excluded after all these years, as Thomas Markle continues speaking publicly? Supporters believe his frustration has evolved into determination. They see a man who understands time is precious, a man who knows opportunities cannot be postponed forever, a man who appears increasingly unwilling to allow these questions to vanish unanswered. And then another layer enters the story. Questions surrounding secrecy, questions surrounding access, questions surrounding information that many believe could easily resolve concerns if it were simply addressed directly. That is where the debate becomes especially intense, because some observers argue that straightforward explanations could end years of speculation overnight, yet the explanations never seem to come. Instead, the silence remains. And every year that silence continues, it becomes harder for many people to ignore. The claims surrounding secrecy during key moments have become some of the most discussed aspects of the entire controversy. Stories, accounts, and recollections continue circulating among royal observers. And while supporters of Thomas Markle argue these details deserve clarification, critics insist the public has no right to demand answers, but that conflict itself is what keeps the story alive. One side says questions deserve responses. The other says privacy should end the discussion. Yet somehow, years later, neither side has moved. The mystery only deepens from there, because once people begin looking closely, they start noticing something else. It is not merely the absence of access. It is the pattern surrounding the information that does emerge. Every new birthday photograph, every carefully curated image, every public glimpse seems to trigger another wave of debate. Supporters of Thomas Markle argue that the issue is no longer one isolated question. They believe it has become a collection of unanswered questions stacked on top of one another until the entire structure starts looking impossible to ignore. The images themselves have become part of the controversy. Royal watchers compare them side by side. They analyze details. They debate appearances. They point out differences they believe deserve explanation. And because Thomas Markle has never been given direct access to his granddaughter, he finds himself examining the same public photographs as everyone else. That fact alone continues to shock many observers. The grandfather is not being shown private family moments. Instead, he is left studying public images while searching for answers about a child he says he barely knows. What makes the situation even more dramatic is that the discussion is no longer limited to social media speculation. Over time, respected voices within royal commentary circles have raised concerns of their own, different personalities, different perspectives, different backgrounds, yet many of them seem to arrive at the same destination. They believe there are questions that remain unresolved, questions that have lingered for years despite repeated opportunities to address them directly. For Thomas Markle's supporters, that growing chorus matters. They argue that when one person raises concerns, it can be dismissed. When several people raise similar concerns independently, it becomes harder to ignore. And when years pass without definitive answers, curiosity naturally intensifies. The silence surrounding these issues has become almost as significant as the issues themselves. Every time a question is left unanswered, speculation expands to fill the space. Every time clarification fails to appear, observers become more convinced that clarification is needed. The cycle repeats again and again, creating a controversy that refuses to fade despite constant attempts to move beyond it. What troubles many supporters most is the contrast they see between public presentation and private reality. They point out that carefully managed glimpses of the children are shared publicly while family members remain completely excluded. To them, that contradiction is impossible to overlook. If privacy is the goal, they ask, why release selective images at all? And if selective images can be shared with millions of strangers, why can't a grandfather be allowed the ordinary connection most families take for granted? Those questions continue echoing through every new development. As the children grow older, another issue begins emerging. Time changes everything. Children become teenagers. Teenagers become adults. Eventually, they begin asking questions of their own. They begin exploring family histories. They begin examining decisions that were made on their their behalf. And supporters of Thomas Markle believe that day may ultimately become the most important chapter of all, because one day Archie and Lilibet will be old enough to understand the story that unfolded around them. They will learn that their grandfather repeatedly asked to know them. They will learn about the interviews, the statements, and the public appeals. They will learn about the years that passed without resolution. And supporters believe those future conversations could carry enormous emotional weight. That possibility appears to drive Thomas Markle more than anything else. His recent comments do not sound like those of a man chasing publicity. They sound like those of a man racing against time. A man who fears opportunities slipping away. A man who wants answers before it is too late to receive them. And whether people agree with him or disagree with him, they cannot deny the emotional power behind that reality. That is why this story continues capturing attention. Not because of a single shocking revelation, not because of one dramatic headline, but because of the cumulative effect of years of unanswered questions, years of separation, years of silence, and years of a grandfather publicly insisting that something about the situation does not make sense. And now, as another birthday passes and another chapter closes, the same questions remain standing exactly where they were before. A grandfather still waiting, a family still silent, observers still debating, and a controversy that refuses to disappear no matter how many years pass. Because in the end, the most powerful detail is also the simplest. A little girl has continued growing up. Her grandfather says he still does not truly know her. Years have passed. Questions remain. And until those questions receive answers, many believe this story is far from over. If anything, they believe the silence itself has become the loudest part of all.